All right, so now without further ado, I'm going to introduce Katie. Let her drop some wisdom upon us. So, Katie Warner is a national Catholic speaker and best-selling children's book author. We have several of her books in our home. She is also the writer behind a popular prayer journal series, including A Parent Who Prays and A Spouse Who Prays, as well as the author of Head and Heart, Becoming Spiritual Leaders for Your Family. Katie holds a graduate degree in Catholic theology from the Augustine Institute, writes for the National Catholic Register, manages katiewarner.com, is a TV show segment host on EWTN, and helps others home to the church through Catholics Come Home. Katie lives and homeschools in Georgia with her husband and 4 young children. Thank you, Katie. I'll hand it off to you.
Thank you, Justin. It's so great to be with you all tonight. What seems like many years ago now, I was enjoying a leisurely stroll around my in-laws' neighborhood in Southern California with my then 3-month-old son, RJ, in the stroller, when an unmarked white van started following us from street to street. I quickly made my way back to my in-laws' house, seeking refuge behind their locked door and a sign on the front gate notifying strangers my dog can make it to the fence in 2.3 seconds. Can you? That night I told my husband Raymond what had happened, and before I could finish the story, he was on Amazon buying pepper spray. 2 days later, an unusually large box arrived in the mail. This was before everyone had Prime and before Amazon started sending totally odd box sizes for products that didn't match the box size. But when Ray got home from work, he excitedly opened the package to reveal the thoughtful gift he had purchased for me. Out of the box came a giant can of pepper spray, which in my opinion bore a closer resemblance to a fire extinguisher than the little perfume-sized defense mechanism that I was expecting to see. Apparently, according to the manufacturer, it would create a far-reaching pepper fog if diffused in the direction of a potential threat. Unfortunately, at the time, what my husband was very serious about, I thought was a joke. And as I chuckled, his heart sank, his hopes of guarding me to the nth degree crushed under the weight of my inappropriate laughter. All he wanted to do was to protect me. And instead of being receptive and grateful and sporting a new ready to conquer evil villains in the neighborhood attitude, I was unsupportive and demotivating. After I came around and sincerely apologized, that gunboat of pepper spray became one of my favorite gifts that I've ever received from him because it reminds me of my husband's fundamental masculine nature, that God specifically gave him the gifts and the responsibility of protecting and guarding and leading his family. And while God gave him those uniquely masculine leadership gifts, he likewise gave me uniquely feminine gifts. And when the two of us came together in marriage, we were given the opportunity to become a real force for spiritual good for our family, because God designed us to complement one another, to be subordinate to one another's strengths, to capitalize on each other's uniquely masculine and uniquely feminine gifts and strengths to help lead and love each other and everyone in our family toward heaven. Pope Pius XI, in his encyclical Casti Connubii, wrote, "For if man is the head, the woman is the heart. And as he occupies the chief place in ruling, so she may and ought to claim for herself the chief place in love." Okay, so this is probably what brought you here tonight or to watching this video whenever you watch it, knowing that you are the spiritual head or the spiritual heart of your home and wanting to take that seriously. Hopefully together as a couple with those unique masculine and unique feminine gifts that create an amazing team-like structure in spiritual leadership. But even if it's just one of you taking spiritual leadership in the home seriously right now, it can do such good for your family. So I want today's workshop to be super practical. So you can leave here with some takeaways that you can implement in your family life, both right now and over time, that will ultimately help your family live out the faith more creatively, intentionally, faithfully, peacefully, and vibrantly at home. Okay, so let me reiterate, this is an ideas talk. I'm going to throw a lot of possibilities at you, and it would likely be a bad idea to try to implement all of them in your home starting tomorrow. But regardless of whether or not you're an overdoer or someone who struggles with follow through, just focus on one small step. That's how runners do it, right? They don't think, yikes, I have 106,000 steps left in this race. They just take the one next step forward. And when they take that step, they take another and another. Think of family faith formation like that. At the end of this talk, I want you to pick just one thing to implement, one small change to help your family grow in faith. St. Francis de Sales says, God takes pleasure to see you take your little steps. So let's talk about some of those little steps, some practical ideas for family faith. Here's a preview of the 4 strategies that we're going to unpack a little bit tonight. On a quick technical note, I'm going to have on each of the slides some resources that would be useful in helping implement these ideas into your family faith formation. So feel free to screenshot them, take notes and write them down, whatever you want to do to be able to, utilize and follow up with these resources. Okay, so the 4 ideas we're going to talk about tonight: define a mission, prioritize prayer, grow in virtue together, and live Catholic culture in the home. Okay, so let's talk about defining a mission. Patrick Lencioni, the New York Times bestselling author and founder and CEO of the management consulting firm The Table Group in the San Francisco Bay Area. Some of you might also know him from The Amazing Parish. Has written numerous bestselling books, selling millions of copies around the globe. Among his titles, there's a book that's unlike a lot of his other business books. In The 3 Big Questions for a Frantic Family, Pat applies his leadership and management techniques specifically to family life. It's a great book, but it's never sold nearly as many copies as his business books do. When I asked Patrick about this, he says he thinks it's due to personal priorities. People are willing to invest time and energy into running businesses, he told me, but when it comes to their family, they think, oh, I don't need to do that. But over the years, Pat has noticed that organizations that fail to clarify a vision for their future devolve into what he calls the generic or unintentional. So if the family is the most important organization in our lives, then why are we often so unintentional about the direction our family is moving in and the way we are building relationships and living out our faith in the home on a day-to-day basis? None of us want our family life to devolve into something generic or unintentional. Years ago, Pat and his wife, Laura, decided to apply some of the business tools that he was using with Fortune 500 companies at home with their 4 sons, and it worked. What the Lencioni's discovered and teach others now is that couples striving for effective spiritual leadership need a guiding purpose, a mission for their marriage and family to guide them toward intentional living. As parents, we can get easily just caught up in the details. Today I need to do these chores, read these books to the kids, get this child to soccer practice, this child to the dentist, turn in this project at work, make dinner, etc. That we don't stop to discuss and plan an overarching vision for our family life, a defined direction that we want to move in with our families over time. But even the saints have missions and mottos. Religious orders have missions and mottos. This having a life motto or mission or having a family mission, the point is knowing one's purpose. Knowing one's family's purpose really helps you to know and stay the course. There's a common adage that goes, that your God-given mission is found where your deep gladness and the world's hunger meet. This is what a mission-oriented family life is all about.
This is session 2 of our parenting workshops, and tonight we're going to talk about discipline, and especially getting tactical with that, developing a plan that will work in our home. So really looking forward to that conversation. I know I will benefit personally from this conversation tonight. So I'm going to introduce our speakers, Mike and Alicia Hernon. So Michael and Alicia are on a mission to empower parents to embrace their sacred calling which they believe is the key to the renewal of the church and our society. Their ministry, the Messy Family Project, began as a podcast and has grown into a multimedia platform that provides free resources to couples to help them nurture their marriage as well as build a Catholic culture within their home. Although the podcast reaches over 25,000 families every month, the Hernons also travel throughout the United States, inspiring husbands and wives to have deeper conversations and giving them the insight, inspiration, and practical tools to do so. They reside in Steubenville, Ohio, and are parents to 10 children and grandparents to 5. Learn more about them and their ministry at messyfamilyproject.org. Mike and Alicia, thanks so much for making time. I'm going to hand it to you.
Thank you, Justin. It is so great to be here with all of you tonight. We are, we feel humbled to be called into this ministry, serving parents. Because when you think about it, how did you get here, right? And not just here tonight or watching the recording, but how did you become parents, right? Who let you do this, right? I assume that as a married couple, you had some kind of marriage prep program. You went through a day or maybe a weekend or a retreat, or there was some kind of class or program that taught you about marriage. It gave you at least some of the basics, right? But then when you had your first kid, was there any class, any program, any even manual that we get? Of course not, right? We don't have anything. I mean, I become an employee at a company and I have a whole orientation program. When we rent a car, I've driven a car before, but the rental car company walks around the car, shows me where the gas is, shows me where the USB port or whatever is going on. You get a cell phone, you have a manual, you have all these things. But for parenting, particularly when we get to the very challenging, very frustrating aspects like discipline, there's nothing for us. And so we really want to look at the reality that today, more than any day in kind of distant memory, where there were extended family that were around, moms, dads, uncles, aunts, who are there to kind of help you out, to point you in the right direction. And maybe you have some of those, which is awesome. But few and far between are they actually involved in the day-to-day life of families. And so we want to spend some time tonight to talk about discipline. We want to talk about one of the most important elements of our parenting. How are we passing on our virtue, our faith, our values onto our kids? Now, when you become a parent, you learn very quickly how hard it is to control these little critters called children, right? For many parents, the term discipline might equate to, how do I bend them to my will? How do I create peace and order in our household? And that question, although flawed, it really isn't satisfying, right? The better question is, how am I going to raise our kids into virtuous, responsible, mature adults? Because ultimately, we're not raising kids, we're raising adults, and we need to set our eyes on that. That's our goal. That's our focus, right? So, and right out of the gate, I want to just, we're called the Messy Family Project, so we want to burst a couple of bubbles on the front end, okay? There is no perfect answer for discipline. There is no silver bullet. There is no one size fits all, right? If you think that way, you're setting yourself up for failure and grave disappointment. Now, every child is unique, and maybe situations are unique. Couples and families are really having a lot of uniqueness that brings into them. I thought, wow, we have 10 kids. So I thought, when we have 9 kids, maybe we get one free. Our 10th kid is giving us a run for the money. It always challenges us. It draws us out, which is inherent in the design of discipline. It's about this really kind of ongoing process. It's meant for our challenging and our growth, as well as helping each and every child adjust to that. So this is a custom process that you're going to be going through, and this is a great but there are principles. There are principles that really apply in all situations. And there's some lessons that we have learned from our ups and downs, the wisdom we have learned from others. And we've created a tool that is free for you if you're interested, called the Messy Family Guide to Discipline, that can help you walk through this and create your own plan for discipline.
Yeah, we're going to kind of walk through that tool with you. So as you listen to us, you can, and then use our guide, you can actually, with your spouse, make up your own plan of discipline for your home. And it's really important that you have an idea in your mind of how you are going to raise your children. Because if we just kind of follow along with the culture, and if we just go with the flow of the culture, that is absolutely not going to work in this day and age. So there's so many ideas and philosophies about discipline that are out there in our secular world. And I just want to tell you that anything that you hear from a non-Christian perspective, and sadly, I don't think this was always true, but it's true now, that really should be treated with great suspicion in the forming of children. I would say, again, a few years ago, the secular world doesn't see children the way that we do. I would go so far at this point to say the secular culture does not see children with the eyes of reality. I don't think that they are even grounded in sound science at this point. They are thinking that, children are pure and good and they'll lead you. Just let kids figure it out. Let them decide. Let your children correct you. Let them decide where they want to go to school or what gender they're going to be, or, anything like that. And that is a false notion of children. So there's these two extremes. Like there's one that says, that the child is good and pure and, they know better than you do. But then the other extreme is also wrong, which is more of a fundamentalist view that was held maybe in years gone past, that was a human being is completely corrupt. Like children are completely corrupt and that they need to be beat into submission, basically, that they're basically like human nature is like a pile of dung. And that even if grace falls on that nature, it can be nothing more than just a corrupt nature covered with some beautiful snow maybe on top of it, right? But what do we believe is the church? What is the truth? And I should even say that. I just want to back up. It's not even what we believe is the church. This is what is true, right? There is objective truth, and the church defines that truth for us. But the truth is that human nature is tainted, but good. God created us good. He created man and woman good. But then because of original sin, we have been somewhat deformed, right? And so children left to their own devices, they won't turn out good. They need formation. So Paul VI tells us parents must be acknowledged as the first and foremost educators of their children. And this is the line I want you to remember. Their role as educators is so decisive that scarcely anything can compensate for their failure in it. The family is the first school of those social virtues which every society needs. That's how important you are in the formation of your children. That if you fail at this, hardly anything can compensate for that. And it's so important to remember why we are disciplining our children, because discipline brings freedom, right? If I trust my teen to listen to my rules, they can borrow my car, If I trust my elementary school child to behave, hey, they can sit by themselves in the library, or they can play by themselves, at the playground, if I'm watching them from a distance, but they have freedom. So the time that you invest in disciplining your child when they are young is absolutely worth it in the long run. And I know it takes a lot of time. So our oldest child right now, so our oldest is 26 and our youngest is 9. But
Which
we do have
crazy.
but we do have 3 grandchildren with 2 more on the way, who are all toddlers right now. And I watch them once a week to give their moms a break. They all live in town here. And I swear, when they leave my home, I'm like, how do mothers get anything done?
Those little kids, yeah.
But teaching those little ones takes a lot of time and a lot of energy, right? They're always, I want to do it myself, and they want to put on their shoes by themselves. They want to pour things themselves, all of those. But if you allow them to do those things, if you allow them and teach them, then they can do it by themselves. Like parenting is a marathon, not a sprint. And it's good for even us to remember that. Like when we in training up our children, like when they were all, now obviously all 10 of them don't live at home right now. 5 of them are kind of out of the house, but in training when they were all 10 living at home, so 18 to like a newborn, and we would take them out lots of places, we would go to museums, we would go to, go to restaurants or go to, art places or whatever, go to parks, and they were disciplined so they could be free. We just say, hey, just keep a buddy. Like everybody has to have a buddy. And we would trust them because we knew that they were disciplined enough to follow the rules that we set and that they would be polite to other people. And that all came from the hard work that we put in beforehand, which in the end of the day gave us freedom,
and
right?
gave them freedom.
And more importantly, it gave them freedom.
That's so true. That's so true. All right, so we're going to go through the kind of the overview of what we're going to talk about is first the importance of parenting as a team. Then we're going to give you 5 principles about discipline. And then last, we're going to come up with a way to walk through creating your own plan.
So everyone, I'm going to introduce Dr. Ray. Dr. Ray Guarendi. I think most of us know him, a Catholic father of 10 adopted children, clinical psychologist, author of several books, including Raising Upright Kids in an Upside Down World, Jesus, the Master Psychologist, Advice Worth Ignoring, and Being a Grandparent. You know, I got 4 because on his website, you buy 3, you get 1 free right now. Or you buy 4, you can get 2 free. So check that out. So he's a prolific author, TV and radio personality. He's helped a lot of us probably through his YouTube videos and different things we've heard, but now we get to be with him live. His radio show, The Doctor Is In, can be heard on over 440 stations and Sirius XM channel 130. His TV show, Living Right with Dr. Ray, can be seen on EWTN, aired in 140 countries. Welcome, Dr. Ray, and I'll hand it off to you.
Thank you, Justin. The part about the 10 kids is true. And that's kind of why I'm ensconced in this room. It's quieter here and it smells better. People find out I have 10 kids, I always hear this. Well, now that you have your own children, what have you learned? I learned something very critical. I rarely took them out in public. You take them out in public, invariably they're going to pull some stunt, embarrasses the heck out of you. As I was saying, I've been shrinking now for about 40 years. I used to be like 6'9". In the time I've been doing this, I've watched discipline become an ugly word. A word of psychological last resort. A word of all you people who can't get cooperation through sticker systems, win-win scenarios, iMessages, and active listening along with a big jelly bean jar. What has happened? What is going on out there? I don't remember my parents having this kind of authority problem. What I see now is so many parents not enjoying their children because they can't control them. I get maybe 200 emails per month. And typically it's coming from parents who are saying my 4-year-old is strong-willed. And by the way, strong-willed is the most overused description for children by far. Most children are not strong-willed, they are children. Consider the picture. You have a child comes into the world completely self-centered, without any morals whatsoever, totally impulsive, believes the universe is here to revolve around him or her, and then we say, you know, he doesn't listen. I don't know, he seems like such a challenging child. When we talked to the pediatrician told us we have a difficult child. Difficult child is redundant. So what is happening? What's going on out there? Well, as Justin said, one of my books was Raising an Upright Kid in an Upside Down World. Basically, that book talks about how the culture is no longer on your side. The culture is against you. But the thing about the culture is it's very, very good at being against you. It's subtle. It's seductive. It just hammers away at your children the way it is wanting them to think. And so a parent has to be very vigilant to this. That's one factor. The other factor is the man who is giving you this workshop. Me, the shrinks, the experts. We're everywhere. We're crawling all over women's magazines, all over television, radio, putting out thousands of books and articles every month. Net message, what do you know? You're just a mother. Oh, you can stumble your way along. Hopefully you won't foul it up too bad. But you want to do this right the new, modern, psychologically enlightened way. Got to be state certified, congressionally mandated, child development ring, psychomental, international, on Oprah specialist. Why do we discipline kids? I'm sure those of you listening have discovered that this discipline thing is much tougher than anybody ever prepared you for. So many people have convinced you that children are naturally cooperative. And oh, if your child doesn't look at you and say, oh, mother, I've been so blind. I see what you're saying. That's why you're the grown-up. I'm the child. It's also clear to me now. Let's hold hands and sing Kumbaya around the campfire. If your child is a normal child who pushes and tests and resists, then somehow, some way, you're probably not doing it psychologically correctly. That's totally false. What is happening out there is that good parents are assaulted for being strong parents. Why do you discipline? Well, you can't establish morals and character without it. The other reason you discipline is that your child is going to be disciplined. The question is, who's going to do it? If we don't do it now, because you're tired, or you feel guilty, or you're afraid they won't like you, or you're afraid of doing something psychologically incorrect, your child will be disciplined. I guarantee it. Years from now, by a judge, a landlord, an army sergeant, a police officer, an employer. I shudder at this next one. A wife. Somebody's going to teach it, and the world hurts. The world does not give mitigating circumstances. Some employer is not going to say, you are just so cranky. Now, did you get your nap today? You go home and rest up. I'll cover till you want to come back. I'm fond of telling folks discipline without love may be harsh. Love without discipline is child abuse. Because ultimately the child will be disciplined and it will hurt. The world hurts. You're loving. No matter how strict you think you are, no matter how high your standards, you are more kind and more loving than anybody that child is ever going to run up against in this world. I was 3 years old. I said this to my mom. I don't like you. She looked at me. Raymond, you're a little bit behind. I stopped liking you last year. Now, see, that was back before you could psychologically smack parents around. One of my kids tells me I don't like you, so what? I got 5 or 6 who do. Any given moment, I got 50% approval rate. Discipline has become an ugly word. The irony is, if you don't have control, if you don't have quiet, calm, resolute authority, you get ugly. You go to confession. Bless me, Father. I was so much more holy before I had children. I was a nice person. I don't like the way I talk. I don't like the way I scream. You know, okay, just a quick question. How serious a sin would it be to want to think about shooting your kid with a bazooka? Would that be mortal sin? Yes, we don't like what we become. There's an interesting phenomenon that occurs in my office. Parent will come in, describe a 2-foot-long litany of trouble. Then they'll say this. I think I'm giving you the wrong impression. Overall, he's a pretty good kid. I'll ask, how's that? Well, he's not on drugs or anything like that. One of the new moral high bars out there. He's not on drugs. I asked the clients, what do you want looking back at you at age 22? What would you hope to be able to say about that child? If you're going to be content to say, well, you know, given the way kids are turning out nowadays, I'm counting my blessings. Parole officer says one of the nicest kids he has. I tell them, you don't have to parent that hard. Parent like the culture. You'll probably have a kid not on drugs. But if you wish to look at that child at age 22, now no guarantees, but hope and prayer. And what to be able to say something like this? He's 1 in 100. Morals, character, compassion, seeks God. He's a beautiful human being. And I ask him, are you prepared to be a 1 in 100 parent? You cannot parent like most parents anymore. You will supervise far beyond anything they supervise. You will slow down the technological onslaught to your child's psyche by 3, 4, 5, and 6 years. Your standards will be higher, and you will enforce them. And the irony is, as you do this, as you get critiqued and second-guessed and analyzed by those around you, oftentimes by your own family, as your children grow up to become beautiful human beings, you may not get credit for it. You are just so lucky. You just have good children. You have Chastity and Angelica. I didn't get good kids. I got Chucky, Damien, Cujo, and Lucifer. Like it was the luck of the draw, you know. I have a test for you. I'll give you this test that I give my clients. They might say to me, we already get accused of having too high standards. People critique us. People say our kids are going to rebel. They're going to get resentful. They're going to go behind our backs. They're going to get sneaky. And I say, well, it's one thing to have high standards. It's quite another to be able to quietly, confidently enforce them. Let me give you a little test. The test I gave my clients. Very simple. Tonight, tomorrow, if your child does something bad or something wrong, now are we still allowed to use those words? Do we have to morally antithesize the language? That behavior, unacceptable. Ice picking your sister's arm, inappropriate choices. Take 2 stickers off your sister and I'll get them back at the hospital when the baby stops. So if your child does something bad or wrong, here's what I want you to do. One time, calm tone of voice, levy whatever consequence you see fit. So you might say, I asked you twice to stop. Go to the corner, please. Put your head down at the dining room table. I'll set the timer. Timer goes off. You can lift it. You give me your favorite stuffed animal. It's mine on top of the refrigerator now. That's the price for pushing your sister. I need you to write a 400-word handwritten apology to your grandma for talking to her like that. I know your grandma's difficult. I live with her son. But you can't talk to your grandma that way. One time, calm tone of voice, levy whatever consequence you see fit, and then say no more. Just observe your child's reaction. Do they look at you like, who's going to make me? Do they immediately start arguing? Do they come out of the corner 17 times? Do they go to their room and kick the door shut and trash it? Do they look at you like, you may make me do this, but I'm going to make your life miserable for the next 3 hours? What is the reaction? See, the reaction does not tell you your child's nature. It doesn't tell you the child is strong-willed or oppositional or defiant or challenging or difficult. It doesn't tell you any of that. It tells you how the child perceives you. How do they see you? Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit how to get some of that authority back there. So hold on.